These recastings all allowed actors who were ultimately better suited to the part to take over, regardless of what the original motivation behind the recast actually was. Few shows get this lucky when it comes to replacing cast members, of course, but it just goes to show that personnel changes need not be an inherently terrible thing. So with all that in mind, I'm Gareth, you are watching What Culture, and here are 10 TV shows that recast major characters for the better. Number 10, Frank Costanza, Seinfeld. Outside of Seinfeld's central quartet, Frank Costanza is unquestionably one of the show's most beloved supporting characters. George's interminably awkward, irate father, as played so deliciously by the inimitable Jerry Stiller. But Stiller was not in fact the first actor to play Frank, with the part originally played by John Randolph in his introductory season 4 episode The Handicap Spot. Randolph's delivery was ultimately far more stiff and serious-minded than Stiller's, to the extent that Larry David actually went back and had Randolph's scenes reshot with Stiller in 1995 to ensure consistency as the show entered syndication. You can actually still check out the full Randolph performance for yourself on streaming releases of the series, but without Stiller's looser, more freewheeling vision of the character, it is tough to imagine that Frank would have enjoyed such a lengthy recurring tenure throughout the rest of the show. Number 9, Carol Willick, Friends. Friends introduced Ross's ex-wife Carol in the show's second ever episode, the one with the sonogram at the end, where she was played by Anita Barone. Yet Barone, who originally auditioned for one of the lead roles, actually quit the part after just a single appearance because she wanted to pursue other leading parts. As such, Barone was replaced with Jane Sibbett for Carol's remaining appearances across the series. It's an especially interesting switch because not only did Sibbett bear just a superficial resemblance to Barone at best, but her depiction of the character was also markedly different. Though we naturally got only a sketch of Carol 1.0 as played by Barone, Sibbett's portrayal was drier and far more sarcastic, and absolutely for the better. But because the switch happened so early in the show's history, many fans didn't even notice. I mean, now you will, but you probably didn't before. Speaking of Friends, I want to know right now, what is your favorite Friends moment of all time? You let me know in the comments section right down below. Number 8, Jimmy Olsen, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. One of the strongest aspects of The New Adventures of Superman was its casting, particularly that of Dean Cain as Superman and Terry Hatcher as Lois Lane. But by the end of the first season, the showrunners grew concerned that Michael Landes, the actor who played Jimmy Olsen, too closely resembled Cain, and strayed too far from the typical goofball depiction of Jimmy from the comics. And so Landes was replaced for the show's 3 remaining seasons by the decidedly more babyface Justin Whalin. But more than that, Whalin's rendition of Jimmy was also significantly different, giving a more aloof performance that felt more in step with what comic book fans expected from the character. Now that's not to say that Landes' performance was bad, folks, but simply that he didn't really fit in with the show's tone as well as Whalin, who just totally nailed the part. Both good, one was just better. Number 7, James Kent, True Blood. Jessica's smouldering vampire boyfriend, James Kent, was introduced in True Blood's 6th season, as played by the dreamy Luke Grimes. But ahead of season 7, HBO made the surprise announcement that Grimes had been replaced with Nathan Parsons, due to the creative direction of the character. Reports then emerged that Grimes may have quit the part due to the character's eventual gay romance with Lafayette, reports which Grimes himself later denied. Nevertheless, Parsons was an incredibly effective recast, bearing a strong physical resemblance to Grimes and ultimately just evoking that dishy, mysterious vampire vibe a little more confidently than his predecessor. Again, Grimes hardly sucked in the role, but Parsons totally committed to James' aforementioned arc in the show's final season, and was able to absolutely make the part his own. Number 6, Becky Conner, Roseanne. There's perhaps no more interesting or creative example of a character being recast than Becky Conner in Roseanne. The Conner sibling was originally played by Lacey Goranson for the show's first 5 seasons, after which she quit to attend college and was replaced by eventual Scrubs star Sarah Chalk. Now, Chalk's performance as Becky wasn't inherently better than Goranson's, but he made the show inherently funnier because the writers decided to milk Becky's change in appearance for every drop it was worth. Throughout the Chalk years, numerous jokes were made about Becky's odd appearance and absences for extended periods of time, much to both the audience's and the cast's clear amusement. Goranson eventually returned to the part in Season 8, with Chalk still filling in when she wasn't available, until taking the part over in earnest when Goranson quit for good before Season 9. But in the recent Roseanne revival, Goranson returned to the part once more, while Chalk was reintroduced as an entirely new character. Oh, my head hurts. There's surely an alternate universe where Goranson simply played the part for the entirety of Roseanne's run, and it clearly wouldn't have been this funny. I mean, for the laughs, the hot potato recast was totally worth it. If you, yes, you are having so much fun with this list right here, then hit that subscribe button down below and you will get even more of them each and every day. A life well spent. Number 5, Kryten, Red Dwarf. What would sci-fi sitcom Red Dwarf be without its legendarily eccentric mechanoid Kryten? Not as good, that's what. The character first appeared in the aptly titled Season 2 episode, Kryten, where he was played by David Ross. Kryten didn't return until the start of Series 3, where he became a main cast member, as now played by Robert Llewellyn, due to Ross being unavailable to reprise his role. And though Kryten's original debut is far from a fan favourite episode, Ross acquits himself well enough, despite the rather naff makeup, which thankfully was spruced up considerably for Llewellyn's debut in the part. Llewellyn also changed Kryten's accent and vocal tenor considerably, and over the course of the show's run transformed Kryten into a beloved sci-fi icon. Ross clearly had no hard feelings though, as he returned twice to voice the legendary Talkie Toaster. It all worked out for the best. Number 4, Meg Griffin, Family Guy. The role of the Griffin family's put-upon daughter, Meg, is so inexplicably linked with the familiar vocal tones of Mila Kunis that it's easy to forget she was originally played by Party of Five and Mean Girls star Lacey Chabert. Yeah, that's right, Chabert played Meg for the entirety of Season 1 and select episodes in Season 2, but ultimately chose to withdraw due to scheduling conflicts with both school and Party of Five. Kunis eventually then stepped in, and comparing the two is just no contest really. Chabert's higher vocal register and cutesy delivery is totally steamrolled by Kunis' deeper voice and more obnoxious tone. Without Kunis' superior performance, all that Meg abuse would seem a lot meaner than, well, it already does. Shut up being mean to Meg. Number 3, Veal, Arrested Development. In Arrested Development, Veal was the hilariously bland girlfriend of George Michael, serving as the constant butt of jokes revolving around her being a completely beige and forgettable character. And while Anne was largely played by the brilliant Mae Whitman, who has gone on to enjoy quite the career since, the character was actually originated by another actress, Alessandra Torresani. Torresani played Anne for a brief scene in the first season's finale, Let 'Em Eat Cake, and despite the appropriately flat monotone of her voice, she was ultimately just a little too cute for the supposedly plain young woman who Michael Bluth would constantly forget even existed. Whitman, meanwhile, leaned into Anne's homeliness and totally ran with it in her earlier appearances, before eventually becoming a more fleshed out character with something resembling an actual sense of style later on. Hilariously, the original plan was reportedly to have Anne played by countless actresses throughout the series, underlining her absolute anonymity among the ensemble, but it ultimately just didn't pan out. Number 2, The Mountain, Game of Thrones. Gregor the Mountain Clegane is the most imposing physical specimen in the entirety of Game of Thrones, but the character was actually recast twice across the series run. In Season 1, Gregor was played by Aussie giant Conan Stevens, but after Stevens headed off to appear in Peter Jackson's The Hobbit movies, he was replaced by Welsh actor Ian White for Season 2. Though certainly tall, White's thin frame didn't at all fit the written conception of the character or Stevens' prior portrayal, and so Icelandic strongman half-Thor Julius Bjornsson ended up taking over from Season 4 onwards. Yep, that was an attempt at that name and I'm sticking to it. It goes without saying that Bjornsson was given the bulk of the character's narrative meat, but even so, he was also by far the most physically imposing of the three actors, and helped make the Mountain one of TV's most feared forces of nature. Yep, that's a terrifying dude right there. Number 1, Alura Zor-El, Supergirl. The role of Supergirl's mother, Alura Zor-El, was initially played by Laura Benanti throughout the show's first and second seasons, before the CW announced that Benanti's theatrical commitments prevented her from reprising the role for season 3 and beyond. As a result, she was ultimately replaced by Erica Durance, best known to comic book fans for her feisty performance as Lois Lane in the Superman TV series Smallville. Though Benanti did a decent enough job playing Alura, Durance just brought more charm and personality to the part, to say nothing of the sheer meta joy of the actress playing another iconic live-action DC role. By comparison, Benanti was occasionally a little bit flat, while Durance totally knocked the role out of the park. A super display.